Hello there, online physical geology students. This is Mr. Sadler. Excuse me, and I wanted to go over, give you a brief orientation as to your Blackboard course. So before we get into it, of course, all the buttons that you need to access are over here. And I used to have a way of showing these as separate buttons, but Blackboard's has lost that functionality. So I did find a way the other day to make the background a different color than the font. So I chose green for your course, so hopefully you can at least read these words. Note that as I'm going through these things, a lot of stuff is not going to be available for you to see. So for example, things that have the little box next to it, you cannot see that from your view. So if we go down here to begin here, I ask you to read this first, and it basically tells you that you need to access this Blackboard course via a computer. And the reason to do that is because if you use your iPhone for looking at notes, and especially if taking tests and quizzes and stuff, then things might mess up on you. So it's far better to be at a computer terminal, either a desktop or a laptop, if you want to take notes or definitely take quizzes and do your homework and stuff. And I don't think you're going to be needing a scanner. Certainly audio is important because I do have embedded audio files that you're going to be needed to listen to. So just keep that in mind. So you want to make sure that your computer system is fully functional wherever you are. Let's go down here to course materials info. I'm not going to click on this button, but if you do, it should bring you to a little screen and it will say read now. And this is access to your OpenBooks Plus textbook. So this is an OpenBooks Plus course. That means that your lecture textbook is already integrated into Blackboard. There is a way to opt out if you don't want the textbook, if you're adamant about doing that. But this course is all about pictures. So if you see a word or phrase or something and you don't understand what it means, in my opinion, it's really good to look at the textbook and to look at a picture of what I'm describing, because physical geology, among all the other geology courses, it's very vocabulary driven. And all the chapters have very unique words that you're going to be learning. And of course, you can look up these words on the internet as well. But it's kind of in a better synthesized format in your textbook. There's some extra credit buttons here. And there's some things that you don't need to know. This is my grades. So I do a very good job of keeping your grades up to date. So I'm very efficient about that. There's a lab helpers button, so let's go access that. So during the first couple of weeks, I'm going to be turning on this minerals button for you. And so in later weeks, you're going to be looking at different types of rocks, and then eventually we'll get into contour maps. So this lab helpers button is where you're going to go for your lab. Lecture exams and lecture exam extra credit is where you're going to be accessing major lecture exams the weeks that they are becoming available. We go down here to lecture notes. You're going to be getting chapter 1 during week 1. So, and they're going to be released in a very specific way. So you notice that I've written 4 parts here. So that means to me, so part 1 is going to be released to you on Monday, part 2 on Tuesday, part 3 on Wednesday, and then part 4 on Thursday. That means Friday morning, all of that is going to go off, and you're going to get a 5-question quiz. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. So those are lecture notes. Of course, after week 1, that goes away, and then week 2, we're into minerals. I'm going to just quickly mention this, and it may be forgotten. I don't really have a tendency, like right before you take a major lecture exam, after you've received chapter 4, for example, that means that you have the first 4 chapters under your belt, and now you're ready to take a major lecture exam. I don't generally have a tendency to turn everything back on for you. So you need to grab these notes during every week that they become available. And concurrently, at the end of the semester, I will not return all these on. But you can listen to the podcast and you can get the same information. And I'll talk about podcast here in a second. In fact, let's do it right now. Podcast are audio files that I created, and it's basically just me reading the notes. So if you're an audio learner and you want to listen to the notes, and even if you're not an audio learner, what I would recommend after you get the chapter 1 notes, you can listen to the chapter 1 podcast. And the podcasts stay available right up until the lecture exam. And then, of course, they go away. And at the end of the semester, I have a tendency to turn all the podcast back on. And if you miss a chapter and you email me and you say, Mr. Sadler, will you turn chapter 2 on from 18,000 weeks ago? I will probably tell you no, but listen, I will turn on the podcast and you can listen to the podcast because the podcast is going to give you the same information as notes. Let's go up here to the online schedule, which is where we're going to spend a little bit more time. This is your lecture schedule, so let me click on this. Tentative lecture schedule for week 1. So you get the chapter 1 notes, and then on Friday you take a chapter 1 quiz, which also includes a lab quiz. So I'll talk more about that in a second. Chapter 2, you get chapter 2 mineral lecture stuff. Everything that you're seeing on this screen right now on this piece of paper is the exact same stuff that I teach in the face-to-face world. I created this physical geology online class during COVID. So I had to transfer exactly what I do in the real world into the online world. And you're getting the same education, except that now you're getting pictures of rocks and minerals as opposed to feeling the real ones. Igneous rocks comes on week 3, and then week 4 is volcanoes, and that's when you have a major lecture exam. So every Friday, opening at 6 a.m. and going offline at 10 p.m., you get a 5-question quiz. It literally will take you 5 minutes of your life. Most students wait until 9:50. I don't know why, but you can do it all through the course of the day. And I would recommend, if you know that you're not going to be available right up until 10 p.m. to take a quiz, then my goodness, wake up 5 minutes earlier and take your quiz and be done with it for the day. But that's just my recommendation. Every 4th week, you get a lecture exam, major lecture exam, and there are no lab questions on the lecture exam. And then the cycle repeats with just different chapters every week. We get chapter 9. I skip chapter 8. It's a long story. So you get lecture exam 2, and then we have other chapters. Now, around week 11, after you take your lecture exam 3, you notice that the quizzes stop, and it switches to homework. So this homework is governed, let me go ahead and show you that. This homework is governed by what we're doing in lab, and of course we switch to doing contour maps. So minerals is first. You get the pictures from mineral box A, and then of the 5 questions on your quiz, you may have 2 questions from lecture stuff and 3 questions from lab. You may have 1 question from lab, 4 questions from lecture. It's just randomly generated. And you may want to have a tendency to have your pictures of your minerals right there while you're taking the quiz. You want to try to not do that, of course, because I really want you to learn this stuff. Then, of course, mineral box B comes along during the 2nd week, and then the 3rd week you get, it's just a review of boxes A and B, and then you have your first major lab exam. And the lab exam, I believe, is around either 30 questions or 40 questions, so forth. And it's just questions based on your lab pictures of minerals. This is calcite, this is quartz, this is muscovite mica, whatever it is. But it's not just identifying minerals, it's identifying characteristics of the minerals. And all that information is going to be given to you on a weekly basis. Week 5 is igneous rocks. Then we jump into sedimentary rocks, and then you have a review, and then you have your lab exam over igneous and sedimentary. You have 2, didn't mean to do that. You have 2 weeks of metamorphic stuff, and then it switches to maps. So contour maps, even in the real face-to-face world, it takes a lot of concentration with some students because some students get it immediately and other students have a harder time of it. So because you're in the online world, I have taken great care to try to explain it the best way I know how. So on that note, when you get into week 11 and 12, you want to do everything in your power to keep up with your homework. Because if you shave on the homework and just stop doing it, then when you get down to week 12 or week 13, you're now 3 weeks behind. And that's going to be a lot of catching up to do. And you may be confused and you may be scared and I don't want to email this guy. Well, email me, because that's the function of me doing a homework and giving you this lab work, which, by the way, I created from scratch. So I want you to understand how to do contouring at its most basic level. You'll eventually get into quadrangles in week 15, and then you'll do some homework on quadrangles and turn that in. And by the way, all homework is going to be due by Friday at 10 p.m. Friday 10 p.m. is like the magic time. And then week 16 is lab exam 3. And it'll open on Monday and close Tuesday 10 p.m. And then here is your final exam. You'll have that on Wednesday and Thursday. So let me get rid of Word. Lecture notes, I did kind of show this to you a little bit. Here we have podcasts. So I talked about that, I think. Your quizzes are here. Down here we go to study guides. Study guides are nothing more than just questions that I've generated from the notes. I mean, that's all it is. So if you want to go through the study guides, I'll make these available to you. And every 4th week, I'll open up the answers for all the study guides so you can check yourself. If you want to do it the fancy way, you go to my YouTube channel. So I do not have playlists, but I do have videos, and they're kind of scattered everywhere. But if you go into, say, the Chapter 2 study guide, you'll be greeted by this nice little introduction video. And then I'm just going to kind of skip ahead real quick.
Makes it crystalline.
So it's basically everything that was on the old study guides, except that it's in a more visual way. So these are the fancier study guides, which I like a lot better because it's doceri, which is me using kind of like a whiteboard in the virtual world.
Okay, so based on this information, we're going to...
It sounds like I have a lisp. So anyway, YouTube channel syllabus is there. You can go through the syllabus and see how the course is going to be graded. And I grade this course exactly how I grade the real world. You have 4 lecture exams, 3 lab exams, and a final exam. And that's pretty much the bulk of your grade. So I think that's pretty much it. There may be some things that I'm skipping out. So if you have any questions about stuff, then you're certainly welcome to email me. Let me bring myself back up there. There we go. Oh, come on. There we go. So this concludes this video. So if you have any questions, email me. You can find my information here under Professor Info. So thank you very much.